Oman. The evolution of a nation. From the ancient roots to the modern era. Preface. History is more than a record of events. It is the story of people, their struggles, dreams, triumphs, and transformations over time. Oman's history is particularly remarkable because it stretches across thousands of years and connects ancient civilizations, maritime trade networks, and modern statehood. From the early settlements of prehistoric communities to the powerful maritime empire that once linked Arabia with East Africa and India, Oman has played a vital role in shaping regional and global history. Yet the story of Oman is not simply about trade routes or political power. It is a story of resilience. Its people adapted to deserts and mountains, navigated distant seas, preserved cultural traditions, and embraced modernization while maintaining a deep respect for their heritage. This book was written to bring that story to life, not as a dry list of dates and events, but as a narrative journey through time. For listeners and readers alike, it offers a window into the evolution of a nation that has balanced tradition with progress for centuries. Author's note to the readers. Dear reader, this book was created to make the history of Oman accessible and engaging for a modern audience. While the historical foundations are based on known research and recorded events, the narrative style emphasizes storytelling. Descriptions, atmosphere, and transitions have been crafted to help listeners visualize the landscapes, cultures, and historical moments that shaped Oman. The intention is not only to inform but also to inspire curiosity about one of the most fascinating nations of the Arabian Peninsula. Whether you are discovering Oman for the first time or deepening your appreciation for its heritage, I hope this journey through time offers insight, wonder, and respect for the generations that built this remarkable country. Thank you for being part of this exploration. Chapter 1, Land of the Dawn. In the far corner of the Arabian Peninsula lies a land of contrasts, rugged mountains that rise like ancient sentinels, deserts that shimmer under the relentless sun, and lush green wadis where water flows like liquid silver. This is Oman, a nation where the past whispers through the stones of its forts, the scent of frankincense lingers in the air, and the waves of the Arabian Sea carry tales of sailors who once sailed to distant lands. Oman's story begins not with kings or empires, but with the land itself. The mountains of Al-Hajar stand tall, their peaks often kissed by clouds, while deep valleys cradle villages where generations have farmed terraced fields and herded goats. In the south, Dhofar opens to the monsoon winds, bringing life to lands that elsewhere would be barren. Along the coasts, turquoise waters lap against sandy shores, and ancient ports whisper of centuries when Oman's sailors ventured far beyond the horizon. The people of Oman are the living thread connecting this rugged landscape to the stories of the past. Hospitality is a sacred art. Strangers are welcomed with dates and coffee, simple gestures that reflect centuries of cultural continuity. From the bustling markets of Muscat to the quiet villages tucked in mountain valleys, Omani traditions endure, even as the nation embraces modernity. This is a land of resilience and adaptation. From the harsh deserts to the storm-laden seas, Oman has endured, survived, and flourished. Its history is not merely a series of dates and events, it is a tapestry of human courage, exploration, and innovation. It is a story that begins with the rise of early settlements, stretches across centuries of trade and empire, and continues today as a nation balancing tradition and progress. In this book, we will journey through time, following the evolution of Oman from its earliest known inhabitants to the modern state it has become. We will meet the sailors, traders, and rulers who shaped its destiny. We will explore the mountains, deserts, and seas that have nurtured its people. And, through the stories of Oman's past, we will uncover the soul of a nation that has always been at the crossroads of the world. As dawn breaks over the rugged mountains of Oman, casting golden light across the land, we step into the story of a nation, a story millions of years in the making, yet alive in every stone, every wave, and every heart that calls this land home. Chapter 2: Ancient Oman. Long before the cities of Muscat, Nizwa, or Salalah rose from the sands and mountains, the land we now call Oman was already alive with human activity. Its valleys echoed with the footsteps of hunters and gatherers, its rocky cliffs bore the marks of early artists, and its shores welcomed the first intrepid sailors who dared to navigate the Arabian Sea. This was a land of survival, innovation, and early human ambition, a place where nature's harshness shaped the resilience of those who called it home. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence that Oman was inhabited as far back as the Stone Age, tens of thousands of years ago. Flint tools, hand axes, and stone blades hint at the daily lives of these ancient people, hunting gazelles and ibex in the mountains, fishing along the coasts, and foraging for wild plants. In the Hajar Mountains, cave dwellings and shelters provided refuge from the desert sun, while in the valleys, families carved out homes among the rocks, creating spaces that would endure for generations. Petroglyphs, carvings on stone, tell us stories that no written records could preserve. Some depict animals, ibex with curved horns or long-legged gazelles in mid-leap. Others depict showboats, human figures, or mysterious symbols whose meanings are lost to time. Each carving whispers a tale of early Omani life, of people observing their world, honoring nature, and perhaps even telling stories around fires after long days of hunting or sea travel. By the 3rd millennium BCE, Oman had entered a new era, marked by the rise of the Magan civilization. Mentioned in the clay tablets of Mesopotamia, Magan was known as a land rich in copper and skilled craftsmen. The people of Oman mined the mountains for copper, shaping it into tools, weapons, and ornaments that would travel across distant lands. Archaeological finds reveal that copper was not only a commodity but also a symbol of connection. Oman's copper reached Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and beyond, tying this corner of the Arabian Peninsula into a web of early global trade. The Magan people were not just miners, they were seafarers. Their boats, crafted with knowledge of the winds and tides, sailed along the Arabian Sea, carrying copper, shells, and other goods. Coastal settlements like Sohar, long before it became a famous port city, were bustling hubs of commerce, where traders exchanged their wares and stories alike. Imagine the scene: early Omani sailors returning from a journey across the Gulf, their boats laden with exotic goods, welcomed by families who had anxiously awaited their return. Fires burned along the shore, smoke curling into the sky, as music and voices celebrated another successful voyage. Trade was the lifeblood of ancient Oman. Not only copper, but also frankincense, myrrh, and semi-precious stones moved along these early maritime routes. Frankincense, harvested from the boswellia trees of Dhofar, was prized across the ancient world, filling temples, palaces, and markets from Egypt to Mesopotamia. Oman's traders became the intermediaries between lands, carrying culture, ideas, and innovation as much as goods. In many ways, Oman's early identity was shaped by these voyages, by the daring spirit of those who sailed beyond the horizon, seeking both wealth and knowledge. Life in ancient Oman was not only defined by survival and trade but also by community and ritual. The early settlements suggest strong social structures, families and clans living together, sharing labor and protection, and passing down knowledge through generations. In the mountains, agricultural terraces were carved into the rock, allowing small plots of wheat, barley, and dates to thrive. In the valleys, irrigation channels channeled precious water to the fields, evidence of ingenuity and a deep understanding of the land. Even in these earliest times, Oman's people were keen observers of the sky. Navigation, agriculture, and timing of seasonal movements depended on careful attention to the sun, moon, and stars. Sailors read the wind and waves as guides to foreign lands, while farmers watched the rainfall and the changing patterns of the seasons. This intimate relationship with nature became a defining characteristic of Oman's culture, a culture that values harmony with the environment, adaptability, and resilience. Ancient Oman, therefore, was not a static land, it was alive with movement, exchange, and innovation. The mountains and deserts tested human endurance, while the seas connected the people to the wider world. The early Omani identity emerged from this delicate balance, strong yet flexible, rooted yet outward-looking. As the centuries passed, these foundations would give rise to more complex societies, richer trade networks, and the emergence of powerful dynasties. The story of Oman was only beginning, and the echoes of its ancient past, tools, carvings, boats, and fragrant incense, would continue to resonate across time, shaping the character of a nation that thrives at the crossroads of history. Chapter 3: Maritime Crossroads of Empires. Oman's story cannot be told without its intimate bond with the sea. For millennia, the turquoise waters of the Arabian Sea and the Gulf of Oman were not barriers, but highways, pathways of trade, culture, and adventure. From the early days of the Magan civilization to the rise of powerful dynasties, Oman's coasts and ports became the meeting point of civilizations, a crossroads where east met west and the desert met the waves. The port city of Sohar, located on Oman's northern coastline, became the heart of this maritime world. Long before it was called home to bustling markets and thriving neighborhoods, Sohar was a hub of sailors, traders, and craftsmen. The air was thick with the scent of spices, resin, and salt. Ships laden with copper, frankincense, dates, and textiles arrived from distant lands, their sails catching the wind as deftly as the traders caught the attention of visiting merchants. Here, languages mingled as freely as goods. Arabic, Persian, Indian, and even early Greek tongues echoed across the docks. Persian influence left a profound mark on Omani culture and society. Traders from the Persian Gulf brought silks, ceramics, and knowledge of navigation and architecture. Many settled along the coasts, intermarrying with local families, building fortified homes, and creating a fusion of cultures that enriched Oman's social fabric. From them, Omanis learned advanced seafaring techniques, the art of constructing larger vessels, and the use of navigational instruments that would carry sailors across the Arabian Sea. But Oman was not only shaped by those who arrived, it shaped them in return. Ancient traders and visitors marveled at the skill of Omani shipbuilders, whose vessels were sturdy enough to endure the monsoon winds yet nimble enough to sail into hidden coves. These early boats, crafted from local timber and lashed together with rope, were a testament to Omani ingenuity and an early symbol of their maritime identity. Sailors shared stories of long voyages, nights spent under a blanket of stars, the rhythmic crash of waves against the hull, and the anxious thrill of returning to port with cargo that could change fortunes. Oman's coasts also witnessed the flow of ideas and religions. Christianity, Judaism, and later Islam arrived not as invasions but through trade and cultural exchange. Missionaries, scholars, and merchants carried their beliefs and customs alongside their goods. While Oman embraced Islam in the 7th century, the earlier diversity of faiths left traces in its architecture, rituals, and openness to other cultures, a characteristic that would endure for centuries. The strategic location of Oman made it a prize for empires seeking control over trade routes. Persian dynasties often sought alliances with local tribes, offering protection or demanding tribute. At the same time, the Indian subcontinent and the coasts of East Africa were never far from Omani interests, and trade networks expanded to these distant lands. Ships from Oman could be seen along the coastlines of modern-day India, Pakistan, and even the Horn of Africa. Each voyage carried more than goods, it carried culture, knowledge, and stories of faraway lands. The maritime tradition was not without its dangers. Storms in the Arabian Sea were fierce, and pirates occasionally threatened the trade routes. Yet the Omani sailors were skilled navigators. They read the monsoon winds like a map, understood the patterns of the tides, and charted courses by the stars. In some coastal villages, elders still tell tales of legendary sailors who circumnavigated unknown lands, returning with treasures, stories, and knowledge that would inspire generations. Inland, Oman's mountains and deserts stood in contrast to its busy ports, offering protection and sustaining communities that maintained tribal autonomy. This balance between sea and land allowed Oman to thrive independently even as larger empires tried to exert influence. The desert tribes supplied manpower, guarded trade routes, and upheld traditions, while coastal cities provided commerce, culture, and connections to the wider world. It is here, in this delicate balance, that Oman's identity as a maritime crossroads was forged. The land shaped the people, the sea connected them to the world, and the flow of goods, ideas, and culture created a society that was outward-looking yet deeply rooted in its traditions. Oman was not merely a passive observer in the currents of history, it was an active participant, a connector of civilizations, and a pioneer of trade and seafaring. The story of Oman's maritime crossroads is also the story of human ambition, the desire to explore, to connect, and to thrive. It is a story of sailors watching the horizon for months, families anxiously awaiting their return, and communities that flourished by embracing both land and sea. The foundations laid in these centuries of trade, cultural exchange, and seafaring expertise would set the stage for the rise of Oman as a regional power and a formidable maritime force in the centuries to come. As the sun sets over Sohar and the gentle waves lap at the shore, one can imagine the early traders loading their vessels, sharing stories, and preparing to journey into the unknown. This spirit, the courage to sail beyond the familiar and the wisdom to navigate both waters and people, is a thread that runs through Oman's history, guiding it toward a future shaped as much by ambition as by tradition. Chapter 4: The Rise of Islam and the Abadi Tradition. The 7th century marked a turning point not only for the Arabian Peninsula but also for Oman itself. Across the deserts and mountains, a new faith was spreading: Islam. Its message of monotheism, justice, and community reached Oman through merchants, travelers, and scholars, carried on the same trade winds that had guided Omani sailors for centuries. Yet Oman's encounter with Islam was not a simple adoption. It became the foundation for a unique cultural and spiritual identity that would shape the nation for generations. Before Islam, Oman was a mosaic of beliefs. Coastal towns had been touched by Christianity and Judaism, brought by traders and settlers from distant lands. Inland, tribes held onto older traditions, worshipping spirits of the mountains, deserts, and seas. These beliefs coexisted with the bustling commerce that defined Omani life, but the arrival of Islam brought a new unity, a shared framework of faith and law that could bridge tribal divides. Merchants from Oman first encountered Islam through their trade with Arabia's western regions. They saw the energy of the new community forming in Medina and Mecca, the rise of a social order based on justice and mutual responsibility. Stories of the Prophet Muhammad's travels, his teachings, and his devotion spread along the caravan routes and across the ports, reaching the sailors of Sohar and the mountain villages of the Hajar range. By the early 8th century, Islam had firmly taken root in Oman. What made Omani Islam distinct, however, was the rise of the Ibadi tradition. Named after Abdullah ibn Ibad, a scholar and early Islamic thinker, the Ibadi sect emphasized moderation, justice, and community consultation. Unlike other Islamic sects, the Ibadis sought to avoid extremes, valuing both spiritual devotion and practical governance. In Oman, the Ibadi approach resonated deeply with the people. Its principles fit naturally with tribal structures, emphasizing fairness, collective decision-making, and adherence to ethical conduct in both public and private life. The Ibadi influence extended far beyond theology. It became the foundation of Oman's political and social order. Councils of elders and elected leaders emerged, with decisions guided by consultation rather than by force. Tribes were encouraged to work together, even while maintaining their independence and customs. This system provided stability in a land of mountains, deserts, and shifting alliances, allowing Oman to resist domination by foreign powers more successfully than many neighboring regions. Stories of early Omani leaders reflect this balance between faith, governance, and resilience. One such tale tells of a tribal leader who refused a bribe from a foreign governor, insisting that justice must prevail over wealth. Another recounts the courage of sailors who, guided by their Ibadi principles, negotiated with merchants from distant lands fairly and honorably, ensuring the prosperity of Oman without compromising its values. These narratives, passed down through generations, became part of the nation's moral fabric. Oman's geography also played a crucial role in preserving its independence and Ibadi identity. The mountains of Al-Hajar and the deserts of the interior provided natural fortresses, protecting communities from invasion. Coastal cities remained points of contact with the wider world, enabling trade and diplomacy, but inland strongholds ensured that Oman could resist subjugation. This combination of terrain, social cohesion, and ethical governance allowed Oman to maintain autonomy even as larger empires, Persians, Umayyads, and later Abbasids, sought influence over the region. By the 10th century, Oman had emerged as a cohesive Ibadi state. Its scholars wrote treatises on theology, law, and governance, creating a body of knowledge that influenced both local practice and wider Islamic thought. Mosques and schools became centers of learning, while forts and watchtowers dotted the landscape, symbols of both spiritual and physical vigilance. Families passed down teachings, maritime knowledge, and agricultural practices, ensuring that the lessons of the past were not lost. The Abadi tradition also fostered a sense of humility and moderation that would define Oman's relations with neighbors. Omanis were traders, not conquerors, scholars, not warriors seeking empire, sailors, not pirates. Their faith guided both their interactions and their ambitions, shaping a nation that prized ethics, fairness, and collective prosperity above personal power. Yet, life in early Islamic Oman was not without challenges. Tribal rivalries, disputes over resources, and external pressures required careful negotiation. The Abadi councils often mediated these conflicts, balancing justice with pragmatism. Sailors still faced storms at sea, merchants navigated treacherous trade routes, and villagers contended with the harsh desert climate. Through it all, the Abadi principles provided a compass guiding decisions, fostering unity, and ensuring that Oman's people could thrive even in difficult circumstances. By the end of this formative era, Oman had forged a distinct identity, a nation rooted in the principles of Islam, guided by Abadi moderation, and strengthened by the resilience of its people and land. The mountains and deserts were not obstacles, they were guardians of culture, shaping a society that valued independence, justice, and community. The ports and seas were not only routes for trade but also channels for ideas, learning, and diplomacy. The rise of Islam and the Abadi tradition was not just a religious transformation, it was the birth of an enduring social and political ethos. It prepared Oman to navigate centuries of change, from the rise of dynasties to the threats of foreign occupation, while maintaining a unique identity that remains at the heart of the nation today. As the sun rises over the mountain villages and the coastal ports, one can imagine the early Omanis performing their prayers, consulting with elders, preparing their ships, and tending their fields, all guided by faith, justice, and an enduring sense of purpose. It is this combination of spirituality, resilience, and community that would carry Oman into the next chapters of its history, the era of sultans, maritime dominance, and far-reaching trade networks. Chapter 5, Sultans, Sea, and Zanzibar. By the early 17th century, Oman had grown into a nation whose destiny was bound as much to the sea as to the mountains and deserts of its homeland. The Yoruba dynasty emerged at a pivotal moment, uniting the tribes of Oman under strong leadership and ushering in an era of maritime power that would leave a mark on both the Arabian Peninsula and the shores of East Africa. The Portuguese, who had arrived in the early 16th century, had established fortresses along Oman's coast, seeking to control trade routes and dominate the lucrative Indian Ocean commerce. Muscat, Sohar, and other ports bore the scars of occupation, with forts and cannons erected to enforce Portuguese authority. Yet the Omani people, guided by resilient tribal alliances and a growing sense of national unity, were determined to reclaim their coasts and restore sovereignty. The Yoruba leaders, most notably Imam Sultan bin Saif al-Yorubi, spearheaded the effort. With strategic brilliance and the support of tribes from the interior, the Omanis launched a series of campaigns against the Portuguese. Battles raged along the rocky coastline and at sea, as small, agile Omani ships outmaneuvered the larger Portuguese vessels. After years of struggle, the Portuguese were expelled from Muscat in 1650, marking a monumental victory for Oman. This triumph was more than military, it signaled the rise of Oman as a maritime empire. With the Portuguese gone, Omani sailors and merchants could freely navigate the Indian Ocean, establishing trade networks that stretched from the Arabian Peninsula to India, Persia, and the Swahili coast of East Africa. Ports such as Zanzibar, Mombasa, and Pemba became centers of Omani commerce, connecting Oman to distant lands and cultures. Omani ships carried more than goods, they carried culture, faith, and ideas. Traders brought back textiles, spices, and precious stones, but also knowledge of shipbuilding, astronomy, and governance. Similarly, the coasts of East Africa were transformed by Omani presence. Towns flourished under Omani rule, blending Arab and African traditions in architecture, language, and society. Stone houses, intricately carved doors, and bustling markets reflected this unique cultural fusion. Sohar, once a small port, grew into a hub of maritime activity. Merchants negotiated deals that would shape economies thousands of miles away. Sailors faced unpredictable monsoon winds and treacherous currents, yet their expertise ensured that Omani vessels traveled safely to ports along the Arabian Sea, the Persian Gulf, and the East African coast. These voyages demanded courage, knowledge, and a deep respect for the sea, a legacy that Oman would carry for centuries. The prosperity brought by maritime trade also influenced life at home. Forts and watchtowers dotted the coastline to protect ports and settlements. Inland, towns and villages thrived as traders returned with wealth and luxury goods. Agriculture flourished in the fertile wadis, while artisans crafted jewelry, ceramics, and textiles inspired by foreign cultures yet distinctly Omani in style. Cultural achievements extended to architecture and urban planning. Mosques were built with distinctive Omani features, whitewashed walls, intricately carved wooden doors, and minarets that reached toward the sky. Palaces reflected the wealth and sophistication of the sultans, while forts such as Nizwa Fort symbolized the union of defense, governance, and culture. Even today, these structures stand as monuments to a period when Oman balanced power at sea with stability on land. The Omani presence in East Africa also had lasting social and economic effects. Zanzibar became a thriving center for trade in ivory, spices, and slaves, a reminder of the complex and often harsh realities of commerce at the time. Omani governors administered these territories, fostering economic growth while also spreading the Abadi values of justice and consultation, which helped maintain relative stability in distant lands. Yet Oman's expansion was not merely about wealth or power. It reflected a deeper vision, a recognition that Oman's strength lay in its ability to connect distant worlds. The nation had learned from centuries of trade, cultural exchange, and seafaring experience that its identity was both local and global. The mountains and deserts nurtured resilience, the seas provided opportunity, and the people themselves carried the traditions, skills, and values that allowed Oman to thrive. Sailors of the era became legends. Stories were told of captains who navigated storms guided only by the stars, of merchants who negotiated trade deals across languages and cultures, and of communities that celebrated the safe return of ships laden with treasure. These tales were passed down through generations, becoming part of Oman's cultural memory and inspiring future leaders, traders, and explorers. By the end of the Yoruba dynasty's rule, Oman had firmly established itself as a maritime empire with a global reach. Its influence stretched across the Arabian Sea to India, along the East African coast, and into the Persian Gulf. It was a nation that had learned to defend its sovereignty, harness its maritime skills, and embrace the cultural exchanges that trade brought. The legacy of this era is evident even today. Coastal cities continue to bustle with commerce, forts and palaces stand as symbols of resilience and ingenuity, and the spirit of Oman's sailors, bold, skilled, and resourceful, remains an integral part of national identity. The story of Oman's sultans, Sea, and Zanzibar is a testament to the power of vision, courage, and the enduring connection between land and water. Chapter 6: Colonial Pressures and Tribal Resilience. By the 19th century, Oman's maritime empire had faded, but its spirit of resilience endured. The once dominant seafaring power now faced new challenges: external pressures from European powers, internal tribal rivalries, and the shifting currents of global commerce. The nation had learned to thrive by balancing land, sea, and community, but these turbulent decades would test Oman's unity and adaptability like never before. The British Empire, ever vigilant in protecting its Indian Ocean trade routes, became a key influence in Oman. British envoys, merchants, and naval officers arrived at Muscat's harbors, seeking treaties and alliances. Oman's leaders recognized the strategic importance of cooperating with Britain, whose ships patrolled the seas and whose power could help protect Oman from other foreign threats. Yet this influence came at a cost. Britain sought control over trade and diplomacy, often dictating terms that challenged Oman's sovereignty. Despite these pressures, Oman's interior remained largely independent. The mountainous regions of the Al-Hajar Range and the deserts beyond Muzandam were home to tribes who valued autonomy above all else. Tribal governance was based on centuries-old traditions, where local sheikhs, elders, and councils resolved disputes, distributed resources, and maintained security. Loyalty was often local rather than national, yet these tribal systems preserved stability when external powers attempted to impose control. Trade continued to shape Oman's economy, even as global patterns shifted. Coastal cities like Muscat and Salalah remained vibrant ports, handling frankincense, dates, pearls, and imported goods from India, Persia, and East Africa. Frankincense, Oman's ancient gift to the world, still commanded high value in international markets. Tribes in the interior harvested it with painstaking care, carrying bundles of resin across rugged terrain to ports where merchants sold it to eager buyers. This trade kept Oman connected to the wider world, even in an era of political uncertainty. Life in this period was a delicate dance between tradition and adaptation. Tribes preserved their customs, including oral storytelling, poetry, and music, while coastal cities absorbed foreign influences. Omanis maintained the Abadi principles of justice, consultation, and fairness, which guided both trade and governance. Disputes between tribes were often resolved through negotiation, with elders acting as mediators and ensuring that conflicts did not spiral into lasting feuds. At the same time, Oman's rulers faced enormous challenges. The Al-Busaidi dynasty, which came to power in the mid-18th century, struggled to consolidate authority across a land marked by rugged terrain and fiercely independent tribes. Internal disputes sometimes erupted into rebellion, while external powers, including the Portuguese in enclaves and the British in trade negotiations, sought to exploit divisions. Leaders had to be both diplomats and warriors, balancing tribal loyalty, economic interests, and foreign relations. The social structure of Oman during this period was deeply rooted in community. Families and clans provided security and identity. Women played crucial roles in sustaining households, managing resources, and maintaining cultural practices. Hospitality remained central to Omani life, with visitors welcomed with dates, coffee, and stories of ancestral courage. Festivals, poetry gatherings, and religious ceremonies reinforced social bonds, creating cohesion in a world where political authority was often decentralized. Education and knowledge also persisted, even in challenging times. Scholars continued to teach religious law, astronomy, navigation, and the principles of Abadi governance. Oral traditions preserved history, morality, and maritime lore, ensuring that the wisdom of the past was transmitted to future generations. Children learned to navigate both the harsh terrain of the interior and the intricate rules of tribal and communal life. This era also saw Oman's first encounters with modern technologies. Steamships began arriving at Muscat, changing the patterns of trade and challenging traditional sailing methods. Telegraph lines connected Oman to distant regions, while modern fortifications and weapons gradually complemented the ancient forts that had long defended its coasts. Oman's leaders had to adapt quickly, balancing the benefits of modernization with the need to preserve cultural identity and sovereignty. Despite these pressures, Oman's resilience remained its defining characteristic. Its geography, mountains, deserts, and coasts offered protection and opportunity. Its tribal structure, though decentralized, provided social stability. Its maritime tradition ensured connections with the wider world, even in the face of colonial influence. And its people, guided by centuries of Abadi principles and cultural continuity, navigated uncertainty with ingenuity, patience, and courage. In the eyes of travelers and observers, Oman appeared as a land of contrasts, ancient forts alongside modern ports, fiercely independent tribes coexisting with centralized authority, and desert caravans moving alongside maritime trade networks. Yet these contrasts were not weaknesses, they were the source of Oman's enduring strength. The nation had survived centuries of foreign interest, internal disputes, and economic fluctuations because it understood balance between tradition and change, land and sea, autonomy and unity. As the 19th century drew to a close, Oman stood at a crossroads. British influence had become entrenched, tribal autonomy persisted, and the global economy was reshaping the nation's ports and trade networks. Yet through it all, Oman's identity, rooted in resilience, faith, and connection to both land and sea, remained intact. This period of colonial pressures and tribal resilience laid the groundwork for the dramatic transformations that would follow in the 20th century, when modernization, infrastructure, and national unity would propel Oman into a new era. Chapter 7: Sultan Qaboos and the Modern Renaissance. The year was 1970, and Oman stood at the threshold of profound change. For centuries, the nation had endured challenges, colonial pressures, tribal divisions, and isolation from the modern world, but its spirit of resilience remained unbroken. Into this delicate moment of history stepped Sultan Qaboos bin Said al Said, a visionary leader whose reign would transform Oman from a secluded desert nation into a thriving modern state, while honoring the traditions and culture that had defined it for millennia. Sultan Qaboos assumed power through a bloodless palace coup, replacing his father, Sultan Said bin Timur, whose strict isolationist policies had left Oman largely disconnected from the rest of the world. Overnight, the direction of the nation changed. Roads and bridges were no longer distant dreams, they became lifelines connecting mountains, deserts, and coastal towns. Airports began to dot the landscape, opening Oman to commerce, tourism, and international diplomacy. The vision of a modern nation was no longer abstract, it was tangible, and it moved with unprecedented speed. Education was among Sultan Qaboos's first priorities. Schools were built in cities, towns, and remote villages, ensuring that every Omani child could access knowledge that had once been limited to elite circles or foreign institutions. Teachers were trained, curricula developed, and libraries stocked with books that spanned science, history, and literature. For the first time, Omani children could dream not only of life in the mountains or on the coast, but also of careers in engineering, medicine, and diplomacy. Education became the cornerstone of national development, empowering a generation to shape the country's future. Healthcare, too, underwent a remarkable transformation. Clinics and hospitals sprang up across Oman, staffed by doctors and nurses trained domestically and abroad. Vaccination programs, maternal care, and modern treatment methods dramatically improved the quality of life. Diseases that had long plagued remote villages began to recede, and life expectancy steadily increased. The people of Oman could now see a future in which their health, education, and welfare were not left to chance but guided by deliberate planning and governance. Infrastructure projects reshaped the very landscape of the nation. Roads carved through the rugged Al-Hajar Mountains, linking isolated villages to urban centers. Ports expanded, enabling Oman to reclaim its historic role as a maritime hub. Airports opened new channels for trade and tourism. Electricity and clean water reached communities that had lived for centuries without modern amenities. The desert no longer separated communities, it was bridged by the Sultan's vision of connectivity and inclusion. Yet modernization did not come at the cost of culture. Sultan Qaboos carefully nurtured Oman's heritage, preserving forts, mosques, and ancient towns. Nizwa Fort, Bala Fort, and the historic town of Misfat al-Abriyin were restored, becoming symbols of national pride. Festivals, music, and traditional crafts were celebrated and promoted, ensuring that Oman's rapid development would not erase its past. The balance between progress and tradition became the hallmark of the Sultan's reign, a lesson in how a nation could embrace the future while honoring its roots. The economic landscape also transformed under Sultan Qaboos. Oil revenues, discovered decades earlier, were harnessed to fund infrastructure, education, and social services. Ports and trade hubs were modernized, diversifying commerce beyond oil. Agricultural programs revitalized rural areas, and initiatives in fisheries, manufacturing, and tourism began to reduce dependence on hydrocarbons. Oman became a nation where opportunity extended from the coastal ports to the mountain villages, where ambition and innovation were matched by tradition and community. Diplomacy and foreign policy were equally important. Sultan Qaboos cultivated a reputation as a neutral, wise mediator in the region, earning Oman respect and trust across the Middle East. Through careful negotiation, Oman avoided the conflicts that embroiled neighboring nations, maintaining stability at home while promoting dialogue abroad. Its ports remained open to trade, its borders respected, and its people safe, a remarkable achievement in a volatile region. The human impact of Sultan Qaboos's reforms was profound. Families once isolated in mountain villages could now send children to school, access modern healthcare, and participate in the growing economy. Women increasingly joined education and the workforce, contributing to society while retaining their cultural roles. Cities grew, towns flourished, and rural areas became connected in ways unimaginable just decades earlier. Oman's people, long defined by resilience in the face of hardship, now thrive in a nation that embraces both their heritage and the possibilities of the modern world. Sultan Qaboos's reign was more than a period of modernization, it was a renaissance. It was a renewal of Oman's identity, a reassertion of its values, and a leap into a future defined by knowledge, connectivity, and global engagement. Under his guidance, Oman became a model of development in the region, a nation that could innovate without losing its soul, that could modernize without sacrificing its traditions, and that could navigate the tides of global change with wisdom and foresight. As the sun sets over Muscat, casting golden light over the Sultan Qaboos Grand Mosque and the bustling Corniche, one can imagine the transformation, a nation once isolated, now thriving, a people once scattered, now united, a culture once vulnerable, now celebrated. This chapter of Oman's history reminds us that vision, courage, and dedication can reshape a nation, and that the spirit of a people rooted in resilience and tradition can carry them into a future limited only by imagination. Chapter 8: Oman in the 21st Century. The dawn of the 21st century brought a new chapter to Oman's long and storied history. The nation, transformed under Sultan Qaboos bin Said, faced fresh challenges, a changing global economy, environmental concerns, and the need to prepare for a future beyond oil. Into this era stepped Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, who assumed leadership in 2020, inheriting a nation proud of its past yet acutely aware of the work still to be done. Sultan Haytham embraced both continuity and reform. He recognized the importance of building on the foundations laid by his predecessor while guiding Oman toward sustainability, economic diversification, and modern governance. Under his leadership, Oman embarked on ambitious plans to reduce reliance on hydrocarbons, investing instead in tourism, logistics, manufacturing, and renewable energy. Ports, airports, and free zones were modernized to support trade and industry, reflecting Oman's centuries-old role as a maritime and commercial hub. Education remains central to Oman's development strategy. Schools expanded, universities modernized, and vocational training programs prepared young Omanis for careers in emerging industries. Technology became a key focus, connecting remote communities to digital resources and ensuring that knowledge and opportunity were accessible nationwide. Women continued to play an increasingly visible role in society, contributing to government, business, and academia while preserving cultural traditions and social responsibilities. Tourism emerged as a cornerstone of Oman's economic and cultural strategy. The country's stunning landscapes, from the monsoon-fed mountains of Dhofar to the golden sands of the Wahiba Desert, from the turquoise coastlines of Muzandam to the historic towns of Nizwa and Bala, became a global draw. Visitors marveled at Omani forts, mosques, and souks, experiencing a culture that had survived millennia yet remained vibrant and welcoming. Ecotourism and heritage preservation became intertwined, highlighting Oman's commitment to sustainable development. Cultural preservation was not limited to monuments and landscapes. Music, traditional crafts, and oral storytelling thrived alongside modern arts. Festivals celebrated Oman's maritime heritage, desert traditions, and coastal cultures, ensuring that the lessons and stories of the past remained alive for future generations. Even as Oman embraced globalization, it did so without losing its unique identity, a testament to centuries of balancing tradition and innovation. Sultan Haytham's leadership also emphasized social cohesion and governance. Policies encouraged dialogue, consultation, and participation, echoing the Abadi principles that had guided Oman for centuries. Infrastructure improvements connected isolated communities to urban centers, providing access to healthcare, education, and commerce. Rural development programs ensured that modernization was inclusive, bridging the gap between cities and villages. On the international stage, Oman continued its role as a mediator and stabilizer in a region often marked by conflict. Its neutral diplomacy, a hallmark of Omani foreign policy for decades, positioned the nation as a trusted partner in dialogue and negotiation. Ports remained open for trade, cultural exchanges flourished, and Oman maintained its reputation as a nation committed to peace, cooperation, and regional stability. Economically, Oman faced the challenges of a global market and environmental pressures. Renewable energy initiatives, such as solar and wind projects, reflected a vision for sustainability. Infrastructure development focused on both efficiency and environmental stewardship, ensuring that growth would not come at the expense of the nation's natural heritage. Trade and industry were diversified, balancing tradition with innovation and maintaining Oman's historical role as a connector between regions and cultures. The human story of 21st century Oman is one of opportunity, resilience, and ambition. Young Omanis, educated and globally aware, navigate careers in science, business, and the arts while honoring their heritage. Families in mountain villages now have access to modern healthcare and digital education, while coastal communities continue centuries-old traditions of fishing and trade. Omanis remain rooted in their values, yet open to the possibilities of a changing world. As the sun rises over Muscat, casting light on the Sultan Qaboos Grand Mosque, the mountains, and the coastline, one can see Oman as a nation both ancient and modern. Its people are connected by centuries of history, maritime tradition, and cultural identity, yet they look forward with hope, ambition, and vision. The 21st century is not merely a continuation of the past, it is a canvas on which Oman continues to paint its story, one of resilience, progress, and harmony between tradition and modernity. Oman's journey into the modern era reflects the enduring principles that have guided the nation for thousands of years: balance, foresight, and respect for both people and nature. It is a nation that has navigated the tides of history, from ancient maritime empires to colonial pressures, from modernization under Sultan Qaboos to the reforms of Sultan Haytham, always guided by the steady compass of its values, culture, and vision. In the 21st century, Oman stands as a testament to the power of adaptation, continuity, and ambition, a nation that has survived, thrived, and continues to evolve, ensuring that the lessons of the past illuminate the possibilities of the future. Chapter 9: Reflections of a Nation. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows over Oman's mountains and deserts, one cannot help but reflect on the journey of this remarkable land. From the earliest settlements of prehistoric peoples to the thriving modern nation it has become, Oman's story is a tapestry woven from courage, resilience, innovation, and cultural pride. The mountains of Al-Hajar, the deserts of the interior, and the turquoise waters of the Arabian Sea have shaped the people of Oman as much as any ruler or empire. For thousands of years, Omanis adapted to harsh climates, navigated distant seas, and built societies that balanced tradition with the demands of survival. Early settlers left traces in flint tools, petroglyphs, and simple shelters, reminders that human ingenuity and perseverance are eternal. The Magan civilization connected Oman to the wider world, establishing the foundations of trade, craftsmanship, and maritime skills. Ancient sailors carried copper, frankincense, and ideas across the seas, forging links with Mesopotamia, India, and East Africa. It was through these early exchanges that Oman first learned the value of connection, that strength is not only measured in wealth or territory, but also in knowledge, adaptability, and relationships with others. Islam arrived and reshaped the nation, giving rise to the Abadi tradition that continues to guide Oman today. Its principles of moderation, justice, and consultation became embedded in governance, trade, and social life. Tribes in coastal towns alike learned that unity, fairness, and ethical conduct were as vital as courage or skill in sustaining a nation. The mountains and deserts, once obstacles, became guardians of culture and autonomy, allowing Oman to thrive even as larger empires sought influence. The era of the Yoruba dynasty in Oman's maritime empire demonstrated the nation's ambition and ingenuity. Sultans and sailors expelled the Portuguese, reclaimed the coast, and expanded trade to East Africa, India, and beyond. Cities and ports flourished, forts and palaces symbolized both strength and cultural sophistication. Omani sailors became legends, their courage and skill echoing across centuries, reminding future generations of the power of vision, determination, and connection. The 19th and early 20th centuries tested Oman in new ways. British influence, internal tribal disputes, and the challenges of a changing global economy forced Oman to navigate external pressures while maintaining its identity. The people, guided by tradition and the wisdom of elders, preserved autonomy, upheld Abadi principles, and ensured that the nation's values endured. Even in isolation, Oman adapted, demonstrating that resilience is both a survival strategy and a defining trait of its culture. Then came Sultan Qaboos and the modern Renaissance. Roads, airports, schools, hospitals, and ports transformed Oman in a few decades. Education empowered a generation, healthcare saved lives, infrastructure connected people across mountains and deserts. Yet modernization never came at the cost of culture. Historic forts, mosques, and ancient towns were preserved, and traditions, music, and crafts were celebrated. Oman showed the world that progress could coexist with heritage, that a nation could move forward without losing its soul. Today, under Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, Oman continues its evolution. Economic diversification, renewable energy, tourism, and digital infrastructure chart a path towards sustainable growth. Cultural preservation ensures that history remains alive, while education, technology, and opportunity empower the youth. Diplomacy, neutrality, and regional cooperation maintain Oman's reputation as a stabilizing force in the Middle East. The nation's story is now a bridge between centuries of heritage and the possibilities of the 21st century. Oman's journey teaches profound lessons about balance. Balance between land and sea, tradition and modernity, autonomy and engagement, faith and pragmatism. It is a nation where mountains guard villages yet welcome trade, where deserts challenge survival yet inspire innovation, and where the past is honored even as the future is embraced. Oman's history is not a straight line, it is a river that curves through time, collecting stories, cultures, and wisdom along its course. For those who walk its streets, sail its waters, or climb its mountains, Oman offers a sense of continuity and connection. The past is never distant, it lives in every stone, every fort, every wadi, and every coastal breeze. The people, shaped by centuries of resilience and vision, carry this heritage forward, ensuring that Oman's identity endures while evolving to meet the challenges of tomorrow. As we close this journey through Oman's evolution, we see a nation defined not by conquest or wealth alone, but by the strength of its people, the wisdom of its leaders, and the harmony of its culture with the land and sea. From prehistoric settlements to maritime empires, from Ibadi councils to modern infrastructure, Oman has navigated history with foresight, courage, and dignity. Its story reminds us that nations are not built solely by rulers or armies but by the enduring spirit of those who call the land home. Oman's sun rises each day over mountains and deserts, over ports and cities, illuminating a nation that honors its past while embracing its future. It is a story of resilience, adaptation, and hope, a story that will continue for generations, carried by the waves of the sea, the strength of the mountains, and the hearts of its people. Epilogue. As we conclude this journey through the evolution of Oman, we are reminded that history is never truly finished. The same spirit that guided ancient sailors across the Arabian Sea, that built forts in the mountains, and that shaped thriving ports and communities continues to guide the nation today. Oman stands as a bridge between past and future, a country deeply rooted in its heritage while embracing the possibilities of a changing world. Its story teaches us that progress does not require abandoning tradition and that wisdom often lies in preserving the lessons of those who came before. For Oman, the journey continues. Each generation writes a new chapter while carrying forward the legacy of those who shaped the nation over thousands of years.